The stars had been peaceful for over 3,000 years. The Galactic Federation was a collection of friendly alien species who lived together in harmony. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and helped each other when problems arose. War was something they read about in old history books, not something that happened in their modern world. The Vorthari Empire led the Federation. These tall, blue-skinned aliens had the best ships and the smartest scientists. Their crystal-powered vessels patrolled space to keep everyone safe. The other species trusted them completely. There were the Nethians, who breathed gas instead of air and lived on floating cities. The Verdani looked like walking trees and got their energy from sunlight. The Kythera were made of living crystal and could live for thousands of years. All these species had one thing in common. They were peaceful. They solved problems by talking, not fighting. Their weapons were designed to disable enemy ships, not destroy them. Violence was considered primitive and wrong. Then the Devourers came. No one knew where they came from. They appeared at the edge of the galaxy like a nightmare made real. These creatures were part machine, part living tissue, and completely evil. They did not want to trade or talk. They only wanted to consume everything in their path. The first world they attacked was a Nethian colony called Gentle Winds. The floating cities tried to communicate with the strange ships that appeared in their sky. The Devourers responded by eating the entire atmosphere. 3 billion Nethians died in 6 hours. The next target was a Verdani garden world. The tree-like aliens offered to share their knowledge of growing plants in exchange for peace. The Devourers consumed every living thing on the planet, then drank the oceans and cracked the planet's core for minerals. Ambassador HFY stood in the Great Council Chamber on the Federation's capital world. His normally bright blue skin was pale with fear. Around him sat representatives from dozens of species. Some made clicking sounds of distress. Others communicated through changing colors or telepathic waves. But the message was the same from all of them. They were losing this war. The mathematical models are clear, HFY announced to the silent chamber. At their current rate of expansion, the Devourers will reach our core worlds in 2 cycles. That is less than 1 standard year. A Nethian delegate floated forward in his breathing suit. What about our military fleets? Surely our combined forces can stop them. HFY's skin turned a darker shade of blue, the Vorthari sign of sadness. We have sent our 12 largest battle groups against them. Only 1 ship returned. The captain reported that our energy weapons made the creatures stronger. They absorbed the power and used it against us. Fear rippled through the chamber in a dozen different languages. The Kythera representative, an ancient being called Senior Archivist Kelnara, slowly stood up. Her crystal body was older than the Federation itself. When she spoke, her voice sounded like stones grinding together. There may be one option left, she said. In the restricted archives, I have found records of a species that might be able to help us. What species? HFY asked. We have contacted every member of the Federation. None of them have weapons that can hurt these monsters. Kelnara's crystal form shifted from blue to deep red, a sign of great uncertainty among her people. This species is not a member of the Federation. They were discovered 300 years ago, but first contact was problematic. Tell us, demanded the Nethian delegate. They live in a system called Sol. The 3rd planet was designated as a Class 1-2 death world. The contact team recommended immediate quarantine protocols. Kelnara paused, her crystal form dimming. The species calls themselves humans. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Class 1-2 death worlds were legendary. Planets so dangerous that most species could not survive there for even a few minutes. Only the most primitive and violent species could evolve in such horrible conditions. What made them so dangerous? Asked a Verdani delegate, his tree-like form rustling with nervousness. Kelnara accessed the old files stored in her crystal matrix. The initial contact team filed a report before fleeing the system. They described humans as extremely violent creatures who had weaponized everything from simple metal projectiles to the forces that hold atoms together. They were constantly fighting each other and their environment. The team concluded they were not ready for civilized contact. "And you think these humans might be able to fight the Devourers?" HFY asked. "I think," Kelnera said slowly, "that if anyone in the galaxy knows how to kill something that cannot be killed, it would be creatures from a death world." The chamber erupted in debate. Many delegates argued that contacting such violent beings was too dangerous. Others pointed out that they were already facing extinction. What could be worse than the Devourers? Finally, HFY called for order. "We will put it to a vote. All in favor of sending a diplomatic mission to contact the humans?" One by one, the delegates voted. Some voted yes because they saw no other choice. When the counting was finished, the vote was close but clear. They would contact the humans and ask for help. HFY immediately ordered the fastest ship in the Federation to prepare for a journey to the Sol system. Captain Yilandra and her crew of 12 volunteers would make the dangerous trip through space that was now controlled by the Devourers. As the council chamber emptied, Kelnera remained behind, staring at the old files about humanity. She had not told the others everything she had read. The reports were 300 years old, but some details still made her crystal form shiver with fear. Humans did not just fight to survive. According to the reports, they seemed to enjoy fighting. They had turned violence into art, sport, and entertainment. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that should have destroyed them. But most terrifying of all was a note from the original contact team's final report. "These creatures do not fight fair. They fight to win, no matter the cost." As she finally left the chamber, Kelnara wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. But the alternative was extinction. Sometimes, she thought, you needed monsters to fight monsters. The question was, which monsters were worse? The forbidden files told a story that had been hidden for 3 centuries. Captain Veltar of the exploration ship Times Harmony's Light Times had been excited when his sensors detected radio signals from the Sol system. First contact with a new species was always a moment of celebration for the peaceful Federation. That excitement had turned to horror very quickly. Veltar's first report had been filed on day 12 of observation. The planet appears to be inhabited by a primitive species that has recently discovered radio waves. Initial scans show they are in the early stages of what they call an industrial revolution. We will observe for several weeks before making contact. By day 20, the tone of his reports had changed completely. These creatures are constantly at war with each other. We have observed at least 47 separate conflicts happening at the same time across their planet. They use metal projectiles, fired from handheld weapons, to kill each other. This level of violence is unprecedented in Federation records. Day 33 brought worse news. The humans have weaponized fire, metal, and explosive chemicals. They have created machines designed only to kill other humans more efficiently. We observed one conflict where over 60,000 humans died in a single day. They call this war and seem to consider it normal. But it was day 47 that made Veltar recommend immediate quarantine. We witnessed a human juvenile fall from a tree onto hard ground, from a height that would kill most Federation species. Instead of dying, the juvenile made loud noises we first thought were distress calls. Analysis revealed these were expressions of joy. The juvenile climbed back up and deliberately fell again. They appear to enjoy risking their lives for entertainment. Day 52 was even more disturbing. Humans regularly consume the flesh of other living creatures. They have domesticated certain animals for the sole purpose of killing and eating them. More shocking, they have learned to survive in environments that would kill Federation species within minutes. We observed humans living comfortably in temperatures that would freeze Vorthari blood and heat that would melt Nethian breathing apparatus. The final reports from Day 67 painted a picture of creatures so adapted to violence and survival that they seemed like monsters from ancient myths. Humans have been observed surviving falls that should shatter their bones, recovering from diseases that should kill them, and thriving in atmospheric conditions that are toxic to most known life. Their planet is actively trying to kill them through weather patterns, geological events, and poisonous creatures. Yet they have not just survived. They have learned to control these forces. But it was the last report that had made the Federation classify the entire Sol system as forbidden territory. Day 71 contained a single, terrifying update. Emergency transmission. The humans have discovered how to split atoms. Not through careful scientific progression as is normal for developing species, but by accident, while trying to create more powerful explosives. They detonated one of these weapons in their own atmosphere as a test. We are leaving immediately and recommend this system be quarantined until they either destroy themselves or evolve beyond their violent nature. Now, 300 years later, Captain Yil Andra was flying her scout ship Times, whispered peace times, toward that same forbidden system. Her crew of 12 had volunteered for what everyone considered a suicide mission. Either the humans would kill them on sight, or the devourers would catch them before they could return with help. The journey took them through sectors of space that had once been busy trade routes. Now, they were graveyards. Yil Andra's sensors detected the remains of dozens of worlds that the devourers had consumed. Some planets were completely gone, leaving only asteroid fields. Others were hollow shells, their cores eaten away, and their surfaces blasted clean of life. When they finally reached the edge of the Sol system, Yil Andra expected to find a primitive world still struggling with basic technology. The old reports had described humans as barely capable of space flight. What her sensors detected instead made her question the reliability of her equipment. She ran the scans 3 times before accepting the impossible results. The Sol system was not primitive. It was fortified. Massive orbital stations surrounded every planet and major asteroid. Energy readings indicated industrial complexes that rivaled anything in the Federation's core worlds. But most shocking were the ships. Hundreds of sleek, predatory vessels patrolled the system in organized formations. These were not exploration ships or peaceful trading vessels. They were warships, and they looked like they had been designed for one purpose: killing. "Captain," her navigation officer reported, "I'm detecting weapons signatures unlike anything in our databases. These ships are more heavily armed than our largest battle cruisers." Before Yil Andra could respond, her communications officer spoke up. "Captain, we're being scanned. Multiple sources. Very sophisticated. I think they know we're here." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human warship. The creature sitting in the command chair was bipedal like most Federation species, but everything else about it screamed predator. Small eyes set forward in its skull for precise targeting. Exposed teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh, and an expression that conveyed intelligence mixed with barely controlled violence. "Unknown vessel," the human said in a voice that somehow managed to sound both calm and threatening. "You are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourself, or you will be destroyed." Yil Andra activated her translation matrix and broadcast on all standard frequencies. "I am Captain Yil Andra, of the Federation vessel Times Whispered Peace, *. We come seeking urgent diplomatic contact with your species." The human's expression did not change. "The Federation? You mean the aliens who decided we were too dangerous to talk to 300 years ago? You remember our first contact?" Yil Andra asked, surprised. For the first time, the human showed emotion, and it was not pleasant. When it smiled, Yil Andra could see the sharp teeth that marked it as a predator species. "Captain, we remember everything, especially insults. You labeled our world a death world and our species as diplomatically incompatible. We've been watching your peaceful little federation through long-range sensors for 3 centuries. Then you know about the Devourers, Ylandra said. Our worlds are being destroyed. Billions of our people are dead. We need help. The human leaned back in its chair. So the same aliens who thought we were too violent to be civilized now want our help fighting something even worse? Yes, Ylandra replied simply. The human was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a different tone. Not threatening, but somehow even more frightening in its calm certainty. Captain Ylandra, you are going to dock with our station. You are going to explain exactly what these Devourers can do and how many people they've killed. And then, you are going to find out why creatures from a death world might be exactly what your peaceful galaxy needs. As the Times whispered peace times was guided toward the human station, Ylandra wondered what they had unleashed. The humans had clearly not spent 3 centuries becoming more peaceful. If anything, they had become more dangerous. But as she thought about the billions of dead across 40 worlds, she realized that dangerous might be exactly what they needed. Admiral Chen Wei had seen many strange things in her 40 years of military service. She had fought in the Titan Rebellion, commanded fleets during the Martian colonial wars, and helped establish humanity's first deep space defense network. But she had never expected to meet aliens in her office aboard Time's Arcturus station Asterisk. The crystalline being sitting across from her desk was beautiful in an otherworldly way. Captain Ylandra's translucent body caught the light from the station's windows and split it into rainbow patterns on the walls. But Chen was more interested in the data files the alien had brought than her appearance. Let me understand this correctly, Chen said, reviewing the information on her tablet. There's been a galactic civilization out there for thousands of years, and you've been deliberately avoiding us? Ylandra's body shifted to a deeper blue color, which Chen was learning meant embarrassment among her species. Your world was classified as diplomatically incompatible with Federation principles. Because we're too violent. Because you're absolutely terrifying, Ylandra corrected. The first contact team filed reports that gave our diplomats nightmares for decades. They described humans as creatures who had turned violence into an art form. Chen walked to the large windows that looked out over the station's docking bays. Human warships were conducting training exercises in the distance. The sight of her fleet had clearly shocked the alien delegation. According to their records, humanity should still be struggling with primitive rocket technology. And now you need our help, Chen observed. Now we need terrifying, Ylandra replied quietly. Chen turned back to face her guest. Tell me about these Devourers. The holographic display that Ylandra activated showed creatures that looked like nightmares made real. They were massive things that seemed to shift between organic and mechanical forms. Part of them looked like living tissue, complete with organs and flowing fluids. Other parts were clearly artificial. Metal plating, energy conduits, and weapon systems that defied easy classification. They appeared at the edge of our galaxy 18 months ago, Ylandra explained. We attempted standard first contact protocols. They responded by consuming an entire star system. The display showed the aftermath of a Devourer attack. Where once there had been planets, space stations, and billions of living beings, now there was only empty space and scattered debris. Chen had seen the results of human warfare, but this was different. This was not conquest or even destruction. It was consumption. They don't just kill, Ylandra continued. They eat everything. They drain the energy from stars, break down planets for raw materials, and absorb the biological matter of every living thing they encounter. Then, they use what they've consumed to build more of themselves. How many worlds have they taken? Chen asked. 43 confirmed. Unknown numbers in sectors where we've lost all contact. Conservative estimates put the death toll at 15 billion sentient beings. Chen was quiet for a moment. 15 billion. The number was almost too large to comprehend. The entire human population was only 8 billion spread across Earth, Mars, the lunar colonies, and the outer settlements. "What have you tried against them?" she asked. "Everything." Yelandra's form flickered, with what Chen recognized as frustration. "Our most powerful energy weapons only make them stronger. They absorb the energy and use it to enhance their own capabilities. Kinetic weapons bounce off their adaptive armor. Biological weapons have no effect because they're part machine. We even tried negotiation. What happened when you tried to talk to them? They ate our diplomats." Chen studied the tactical data scrolling past on the hologram. The Devourers moved through space like a plague, consuming everything in their path and growing stronger with each victory. Their technology seemed to be constantly evolving, adapting to whatever resistance they encountered. But Chen noticed something the peaceful Federation species had missed. The Devourers had patterns. They attacked the same way each time, used the same absorption techniques, relied on the same adaptive defenses. They had become predictable because no one had forced them to change their tactics. "Captain Yelandra," Chen said finally, "I need you to understand something about humanity. We've spent 300 years doing what we do best, preparing for the worst possible scenario." She gestured toward the window where the human fleet was visible. "When our long-range sensors detected artificial structures in distant star systems, we assumed first contact would be hostile. Every advance in our technology has been designed for both exploration and warfare." "You've been preparing for war with us?" Yelandra asked, her form shifting to a worried yellow color. "We've been preparing for war with everyone," Chen corrected. "It's what humans do. We hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. And the worst-case scenario was always that we'd encounter something that wanted to destroy us." She activated her own holographic display, showing the current deployment of human forces throughout the Sol system. Orbital weapons, platforms, automated defense networks, and ship-based arsenals that made Federation military doctrine look like a children's game. "These Devourers have one critical weakness," Chen continued. "They've never fought anyone who fights dirty." "What do you mean?" Chen smiled, and Yelandra was reminded of the old reports about human predatory features. "Your Federation has rules about warfare. You try to disable enemy ships instead of destroying them. You negotiate before attacking. You follow codes of conduct that make war civilized." She pulled up tactical footage of recent human military exercises. Ships that moved like hunting animals, weapons that were designed to cause maximum destruction, and strategies that seemed to assume the enemy would do everything possible to kill them. "Humans don't fight fair," Chen explained. "We fight to win. We use every advantage we can find, and we create advantages where none exist. We study our enemies until we understand exactly how to hurt them, and then we hurt them in ways they never expected." The display shifted to show human weapons development over the past 3 centuries. Kinetic kill vehicles that could crack planets, energy weapons that could ignite atmospheres, biological agents that could rewrite DNA in real time, and, stranger things, weapons that attacked the laws of physics themselves. "You see," Chen said, "the Federation made one mistake when they classified Earth as a death world. They assumed that made us primitive. Actually, it made us very good at killing things that don't want to die." She walked back to her desk and activated the station's communication system. "This is Admiral Chen to all department heads. Implement Alert Status 1 and begin immediate preparation for Operation Deathworld. Authorization, Chen 77, Alpha." Throughout the station, alarms began to sound. Not warning alarms, but the steady tone that meant humanity was going to war. "Captain Yelandra," Chen said, "you're about to learn why creatures from a death world might be exactly what the galaxy needs. But I want you to understand something first. Once we start this fight, we finish it. That's what Deathworld species do." Yelandra watched through the windows as the human fleet began to move. The ships, didn't arrange themselves in the neat formations she was used to seeing from Federation forces. Instead, they spread out like a pack of predators preparing to hunt. For the first time since the Devourers had appeared, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. These humans were dangerous. Perhaps more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. But they were dangerous in service of life, not consumption. The Devourers were about to learn what happened when Deathworld predators decided something needed to die. The transformation began immediately. Within hours of Admiral Chen's authorization, the entire Sol system erupted into coordinated activity. Captain Yil Andra watched from the observation deck of Times Arcturus Station Times as humanity's war machine came alive with frightening efficiency. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols suddenly changed course, racing toward assembly points throughout the system. Massive cargo vessels emerged from hidden bases in the asteroid belt, their holds filled with weapons and supplies. Most disturbing to Yilandra were the ships she hadn't seen before, sleek, predatory vessels that seemed to materialize from empty space as their stealth systems deactivated. General Harrison Kane arrived on the station 6 hours later. If Admiral Chen represented humanity's space-based warfare capabilities, Kane was their expert on ground combat. The man was built like a weapon himself, tall, muscular, and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. "The way I see it," Kane explained to the assembled alien diplomats, "these Devourers have been winning because they've never fought anyone who understands the first rule of Deathworld combat." "Which is?" asked Yilandra. "There are no rules." Kane activated a holographic display showing human military doctrine. "Your Federation fights like civilized beings. You have protocols, codes of conduct, and weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. You try to minimize casualties, even among your enemies." The display showed examples of Federation warfare, energy beams that shut down ship systems instead of destroying them, boarding actions designed to capture rather than kill, and negotiation attempts even in the middle of battle. "Humans gave up being civilized about 300 years ago," Kane continued. "Not because we're evil, but because civilized species don't survive on death worlds. We learn to do whatever it takes to win." Yil Andra studied the human military assessments with growing amazement and horror. Where the Federation had tried to match the Devourers' technology, humans planned to ignore it completely. Their weapons weren't designed to overcome Devourer defenses, they were designed to make defenses irrelevant. "You've been fighting them like they're reasonable," Admiral Chen added as she joined the briefing. "You try to predict their behavior, counter their tactics, and respond to their strategies. Humans don't fight that way." The tactical display shifted to show human battle plans. Ships arranged in patterns that seemed random until Yilandra realized they were designed to create maximum confusion. Attack vectors that made no logical sense from a traditional warfare perspective. And weapons that seemed designed to cause chaos rather than achieve specific military objectives. "We fight like predators," Chen explained. "We study our prey until we understand exactly how to hurt it, then we attack its weaknesses in ways it can't adapt to." Kane pulled up intelligence reports that human agents had compiled about Devourer behavior. In just 72 hours, humanity had analyzed every Federation battle record, examined debris from destroyed ships, and conducted deep space reconnaissance of Devourer-occupied systems. "They're not invincible," Kane declared. "They're just facing enemies who fight by rules they can predict. Humans don't follow rules." The first human task force launched 6 hours later. Yilandra watched from the observation deck as Admiral Chen's flagship, the Times TCSS Retribution Asterisk, led a fleet of 60 warships out of the Sol system. These weren't the exploration vessels or peaceful traders that the Federation preferred. They were mobile weapons platforms, designed to project overwhelming destruction across interstellar distances. But the ships themselves were only part of the human approach. Captain Sarah Martinez, commanding the destroyer Times Damascus Steel Asterisk, demonstrated human tactical thinking during the pre-deployment briefing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Martinez announced to her crew, "we've spent 300 years preparing for the day someone would be stupid enough to threaten Earth. These devourers just volunteered to find out why our world is classified as a death world." The human crew responded with cheers and aggressive enthusiasm that made Yilandra's crystalline form shiver. These creatures weren't afraid of the coming battle. They were excited about it. They showed the same enthusiasm for warfare that Federation species showed for art or philosophy. "The target is Kepler 442b, Chen announced over the fleet communication system. "Federation colony world with approximately 2 million Verdani civilians. Intelligence indicates a devourer fleet of 30 vessels currently consuming the orbital infrastructure." The human response was immediate and chilling in its simplicity. They didn't discuss rescue operations or evacuation procedures. They didn't debate the ethics of collateral damage or the proper protocols for engaging unknown enemies. They simply calculated the most efficient way to kill everything that was threatening innocent civilians. "Fleet deployment in Attack Formation 7, Chen ordered. "All ships prepare for immediate combat upon arrival. Rules of engagement are simple. If it's not Federation, it dies." Yilandra had observed many Federation military operations. They always began with attempts at communication, followed by warning shots, then gradually escalating responses designed to give the enemy multiple opportunities to surrender. Human warfare was different. When the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Kepler 442b, they didn't announce themselves. They didn't attempt to negotiate with the devourers or warn them to cease their attack. They didn't even pause to assess the tactical situation. They simply opened fire. The devourers had been prepared for another Federation response. Energy weapons they could absorb, kinetic projectiles they could deflect, and conventional tactics they could counter. They were not prepared for humans. The human weapons were unlike anything in galactic warfare. Quantum disruption torpedoes that convinced matter to temporarily stop existing. Kinetic kill vehicles that struck with the force of small asteroids. Energy beams that didn't try to overcome devourer defenses. They simply ignored them by attacking on frequencies that didn't interact with normal matter. Most disturbing to both the devourers and their Federation observers was the human approach to battlefield psychology. They didn't just attack. They terrorized. Human ships broadcast the sounds of devourer vessels being destroyed across all communication frequencies. They used weapons specifically designed to cause spectacular explosions visible from planetary surfaces. "The goal isn't just to win," General Kane explained to Yilandra as they monitored the battle. "It's to make sure every devourer in the galaxy knows what happens when they threaten worlds under human protection." The Battle of Kepler 442b lasted 8 hours. When it ended, 30 devourer vessels had been reduced to expanding debris clouds. The human fleet had taken damage, but they had also taken something more valuable: measurements, tactical data, and biological samples from their enemies. "First rule of fighting Deathworlders," Admiral Chen announced as her ships regrouped around the liberated planet. "We learn from everything that doesn't kill us." Second rule: everything can be killed if you hit it hard enough with the right weapon. The human fleet began systematic recovery operations, but not to rescue survivors or provide humanitarian aid. They were collecting pieces of destroyed devourer vessels for analysis. Within hours, human scientists were dissecting enemy technology with the same methodical precision their ancestors had used to understand every predator on Earth. As reports of the human victory spread through Federation space, Yilandra realized that everything had changed. The peaceful galaxy they had built over 3 millennia was ending. But perhaps, she thought, as she watched human ships patrol the space around Kepler 442b like guardian predators, what came next might be better. The Devourers had awakened something that had been sleeping in the outer rim for 300 years. Now the galaxy's apex predators were hunting, and they would not stop until every threat to civilized life had been eliminated. The question was no longer whether humanity could save the Federation. The question was what the galaxy would look like when Deathworld predators finished reshaping it. The war that followed the Battle of Kepler 442b was unlike anything in galactic history. The Devourers had consumed 43 worlds by following the same pattern every time: overwhelm local defenses, adapt to their weapons, then feast on the infrastructure and population. They had never encountered an enemy that refused to follow the predictable patterns of civilized warfare. Humanity didn't try to match Devourer technology or outsmart their adaptive capabilities. Instead, they did what humans had always done: when faced with a superior predator, they became more efficient killers. Admiral Chen established her headquarters aboard the massive command ship times TCSS Nemesis *, a vessel so heavily armed that it qualified as a mobile weapons platform rather than a traditional warship. From there, she coordinated a campaign that violated every principle of Federation military doctrine. "The Devourers expect us to fight them like the Federation did," Chen explained to her senior staff during a strategy meeting. "Energy weapons they can absorb, kinetic projectiles they can deflect, and tactics they can predict. So, we're going to do none of those things." Human scouts began tracking Devourer movements across dozens of star systems. But unlike Federation reconnaissance, which focused on gathering intelligence for defensive purposes, human scouting missions had one goal: finding the most efficient ways to kill their targets. Captain Martinez's destroyer times, Damascus Steel times, exemplified the human approach. Instead of engaging Devourer fleets in direct combat, she would track them to their feeding sites and then attack during their most vulnerable moments, when they were in the process of consuming a world and couldn't maneuver effectively. "Predators are most vulnerable when they're feeding," Martinez reported after her third successful ambush. "They get focused on their prey and forget to watch for other threats." Classic Deathworld behavior. The Devourer's adaptive capabilities, which had made them invincible against Federation weapons, became a liability when humans started using those capabilities as weapons delivery systems. Human scientists developed kinetic projectiles loaded with specially designed viruses. Not biological viruses, but information viruses that could corrupt Devourer biotechnology from the inside. "They absorb energy to make themselves stronger," explained Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's leading expert on xenobiology. "So, we give them energy that's been programmed to rewrite their genetic code. They literally consume their own destruction." But perhaps most effective were the quantum mines that human engineers developed after studying captured Devourer technology. These weapons didn't just explode. They convinced small portions of space-time to temporarily forget that matter was supposed to exist. Devourers that triggered these mines simply ceased to be, along with everything in a 50-kilometer radius. The psychological warfare was equally devastating. Humans didn't just want to win battles. Human ships began broadcasting recordings of Devourer defeats across all known communication frequencies. They left the wrecks of destroyed Devourer vessels in orbit around liberated worlds as warnings. Captain Yilandra, now serving as Federation liaison aboard the Times Nemesis *, watched humanity's war machine work with a mixture of admiration and horror. The humans fought with a ruthless efficiency that made Federation military commanders question everything they thought they knew about warfare. "Your people don't just defeat enemies," she observed during one of her regular meetings with Admiral Chen. "You humiliate them." "Humiliation is a weapon," Chen replied. "Fear is a weapon. Uncertainty is a weapon. We use every tool available, because that's how you survive on a death world." The war reached its climax when human long-range scouts discovered the Devourer home cluster, a region of space they had transformed into a massive biotechnological hive. Federation sensors detected over 10,000 Devourer vessels concentrated in one location, more than had ever been assembled before. The Federation High Command recommended avoiding the cluster entirely. With such overwhelming numbers, any attack would be suicide. They suggested focusing on preventing further Devourer expansion while hoping the creatures would eventually move on to other regions of the galaxy. The human response was characteristically direct. "We're going to destroy all of them," Chen announced during a joint Federation human strategy meeting. "Every ship, every station, every trace of their existence." General Kane arrived at the cluster with the entire Terran Deep Strike fleet, over 300 warships, supported by mobile construction platforms, automated weapons factories, and the crown jewel of human military technology, the Times, TCSS, Nemesis Times herself. The Times Nemesis Times wasn't just a warship. She was humanity's first planet-killer weapon system, a vessel so large and heavily armed that she required her own escort fleet just to move through space. Her primary weapon was a gravitational manipulator that could create artificial black holes and direct them at enemy targets. Today, Chen announced to her fleet as they prepared for the final battle, "We're going to teach the galaxy what happens when Deathworld predators decide something needs to die." The Battle of the Devourer cluster lasted 18 hours. When it began, over 10,000 enemy vessels defended a space-based hive that had consumed the matter of an entire star system. When it ended, the cluster was gone. Not destroyed, gone. The Times Nemesis Times had used her gravitational weapons to collapse the entire region into a miniature black hole that consumed everything within a light-year radius. But the human victory came at a cost that shocked their Federation allies. Chen had deliberately sacrificed 47 human ships to ensure complete destruction of the enemy. The captains of those vessels had volunteered for suicide missions, ramming their ships into critical Devour installations, while their crews transmitted tactical data until the moment of impact. "That's 47 ships and over 30,000 human lives," Yolandra said as she reviewed the casualty reports. "How can you accept such losses?" "Because it ended the war," Chen replied simply. "Those crews died to ensure that no more Federation civilians would be consumed. That's what Deathworld species do. We protect the pack, even if it costs us everything." In the weeks that followed, human engineering teams began the systematic dismantling of remaining Devourer technology throughout Federation space. But they didn't just destroy the alien machines. They studied them, learned from them, and incorporated useful elements into human defensive systems. The Federation leadership assumed that with the Devourer threat eliminated, humanity would return to their isolated system and resume their previous policy of avoiding galactic civilization. They were wrong. Admiral Chen, Ambassador Zephi said during the post-war negotiations, "The Federation is grateful for your assistance. We understand that humanity values its independence, so we won't request membership in our organization." Chen smiled, the predatory expression that still made peaceful aliens nervous. "Ambassador, you misunderstand the situation. We're not asking to join the Federation. We're telling you that this region of space is now under human protection." The transformation that followed was swift and comprehensive. Human ships began patrolling former Federation trade routes. Human bases appeared in strategic locations throughout the galaxy. Human scientists started sharing advanced defensive technologies with Federation species, but only in exchange for complete tactical cooperation. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Chen explained to the gathered Federation representatives during the final treaty negotiations. "Your peaceful civilization survived for 3 millennia because nothing really dangerous ever threatened it. Now you know what's actually out there in the dark between the stars." She gestured toward the star charts, showing human fleet deployments throughout the galaxy. "Deathworld predators don't retire. We don't stop hunting just because the immediate threat is gone. We make sure the threat can never return." As the Federation delegates returned to their home worlds, they carried with them a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. They were no longer the dominant civilization, protected by their own peaceful nature and advanced technology. They were now a protected species, living under the watchful eyes of creatures who had evolved to kill anything that threatened the pack. The galaxy was safer than it had been in millennia, but it was no longer peaceful. In the Outer Rim, human patrol ships maintained constant vigilance against threats that peaceful species couldn't even imagine. In the core worlds, Federation citizens went about their daily lives, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, Deathworld predators were hunting monsters. Captain Yilandra remained aboard the Times, Nemesis Times, as Federation liaison, serving as a bridge between two very different ways of understanding the universe. She often stood in the observation deck, watching human ships conduct their endless patrols, and wondered what her people had unleashed. "Do you ever regret contacting us?" Admiral Chen asked during one of these quiet moments. Yilandra considered the question carefully. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had brought violence and warfare back to a region of space that had known only peace. But they had also brought protection, security, and the promise that no peaceful species would ever again face extinction alone. "No," she said finally. "We asked for help against monsters. We just didn't realize we were asking other monsters to protect us." Chen nodded, satisfied with the answer. "That's what Deathworld species are for, Captain. We're the monsters that hunt. The monsters that hunt everyone else." Outside the viewport, human warships continued their eternal patrol. Guardian predators watching over a galaxy that finally understood the difference between peace and safety. Peace was the absence of conflict. Safety was having the right kind of monsters on your side.